Welcome into Brainstorming America. I'm Ken Rollins, and I'm here with co-host John Merrill. Good morning, John.
Hey, Ken. Always good to be with you, brother.
It's afternoon, ain't it?
Whatever
Wherever
it is.
people are watching,
I'm
that's
excited
what it is.
to be here.
Are you?
Yes, sir.
I am too, man. How about Roll Tide?
Roll Tide all the time.
You are hooked up with Alabama. Every time I turn the picture, you're down there at the University of Alabama. I saw you, and I was going to mention this later, but I'll just do it right now. I looked at all the pictures of you and Cindy at the Rose Bowl.
Yes, sir.
Then you went all over California.
Yes, sir.
I used to live out there, and I thought, man, he's going to all these places. I lived there, and I never went to one of them. But y'all really had a time, didn't you?
Well, one of the things that we decided to do on this trip was to visit a couple of places that we had not been before. We've been to California several times, but we wanted to make sure that we did that. And one of the places that we went was Bronson Canyon and Bronson Cave. Now, you will know that area as the Bronson Cave was actually where they filmed Batman, when Batman would come out of the Bat Cave.
Car would come out.
And so it would come around that way, and that was very, very cool. And then Bronson Canyon is right there where the cave is, and that's where they filmed a lot of The Lone Ranger. But they did a ton of Westerns all during the 50s, the 60s, and the 70s when Westerns were still very, very popular. And The Lone Ranger was filmed there when they initially started the show, where Tonto came and found John Reed after he'd been shot, and then they made 6 graves instead of 5, and then that's where The Lone Ranger was. And I don't know if you saw this one picture, Ken, that I put on there, but it had some birds, and I'm not sure what they were that were flying, but they were giant with
Condor.
big wingspans, and it may have been. But I do know this. I know that when they were flapping their wings, you could hear their wings moving, and
Wow.
I had never been in an environment like that where I could hear it like
That's
that
a
before.
condor.
But
I know.
it was a tremendous time.
Wow. And that's some of the things that you saw, I recognize, but the TV thing, Hollywood, when I went on one of the Universal cruises, they did something that was really simple. They had a wagon train, and they showed the things that we miss watching the show, we'd miss it. For example, they'd have a bucket like this bottle, and they have the bucket on the wagon train sitting here. And then they go to a cut for a commercial, and they come back. They had somebody, a stagehand, had accidentally moved the bucket. So you're sitting there watching, all of a sudden the bucket jumps.
Right.
The bucket just jumps on its own. So you think that somebody's a ghost or something.
Right.
But I can sit here right now and move this, and we go to commercial, the bottle will actually jump. So there's other things like that we don't ever pay attention to.
Absolutely. But we went to the Brady Bunch house too, and that was
what?
kind of cool, having an opportunity to go to the Brady Bunch house, because that was such a popular show in the early 1970s, and so it was really a special time too for us to be able to do that.
Yeah. So you played tourist.
Yes, sir, we did.
Well, I saw you was enjoying yourself, and that you you didn't like losing the Rose Bowl. But,
No, everything was fine till the last play of the game.
All right, now that I'm on that, I got to ask you something else. Where's Nick Saban going to go now? What's he going to do? I know he's not going to be coaching.
No, he's not going to coach, but I know that he's going to be doing some TV, and of course he does that really well. He's very smart, he's very articulate. Nobody knows football any better than Coach, and he will be a great addition to whatever group he becomes a part of. But he's staying in Tuscaloosa for the immediate future and still helping with the university and still helping with the football program, and can't put a price on that, because somebody said the other day, if you come in and you had 3 messages, and one of them was from the university president, one of them was from Kalen DeBoer, the new football coach, and one of them was from Coach Saban, which one would you return first? And you'd return the one that doesn't have a job. That would be Coach Saban. He'd be the first person you call back.
Absolutely. And a lot of people don't know this. He's got 9 dealerships, automobile, Mercedes, I believe, and that's That's quite a deal in itself.
Yes, sir.
So I just wondered if you had a.
Well, he's got a hotel. He's got a lot of different investments in Tuscaloosa, around the South, and throughout the nation.
Before we get into too much, we got to cut away. But I wanted this contested election where they're talking about taking Trump off of the ballot in Colorado. You as a Secretary of State, what are your feelings regarding that?
Oh, it's a real problem. And not only is it a real problem, it's a problem that's got to be addressed in the court system. Because if we let Jenna Griswold, who is the Secretary of State in Colorado, get away with this, then what we're doing is we're opening up opportunities in all 50 states around the Union for the Secretary of State to indicate that he or she is not interested in the candidacy of a particular individual and removing that person from eligibility to be able to serve. That's not what the Code and the Constitution of the United States says about a federal office, and there are no codes or constitutions in any state in the Union that would permit that. So we cannot allow that. I've actually joined in a lawsuit to make sure that that does not happen.
If you was as Secretary of State, would that not be considered, or would it be considered election interference on your part?
Of course it would.
To do that.
And it's a major problem that we have got to push back against, because when we allow this to occur and we allow it to be promoted by anybody that has a different philosophy politically than the person in office in that particular state, we're opening up a can of worms, and as they used to say, Pandora's box, and something that we will never be able to go back to the way that we're supposed to be. And we're so excited that you chose to join us this week. This is just the first of many topics we're going to cover today. We look forward to continuing to share with you for the next 2 segments. Take a break. We'll be right back.
Welcome back into Brainstorming America. That's what it is.
That's what it is today.
Yeah, it is today. You're with John Merrill. John, the school system, and I don't mean the 12th grade, no, I mean our national colleges and things, Harvard and all of them. The anti-Semitic deal that's going on, like Harvard, for example, to me, that is the crumbling of the college systems across the United States. It's just one school and then another school and another. They've turned against, they stand out there, they're praising Hamas. They're actually praising Hamas, the one that burned those babies, killed them. And these are 18, 19-year-old kids. And they come out there
who have no life experiences and know
None.
nothing about what's going on in the world. But they've got a mouth, and because they have a mouth and because they have a phone, they think they can communicate anything that comes to their mind. Sometimes they need to realize and understand it's better to be quiet and to listen to what's going on before you form an opinion and before you share it. You know, there's an old quote that says it's better to be thought a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. And that's what's happened in many instances in this situation.
And what they're doing is they're taking Hamas, the one that did all the murdering and everything, they're aligning that with Palestine. They're one of the same. So they're saying, we kill 10 Hamas, we kill 10 Palestinians in their eyes. They don't know what they're talking about. They actually do not know what's going on. And that's what bothers me. If that is turning one school, such as Harvard, where the kids are, if you're Jewish faith, you are afraid to even let it be known in school.
Well, Ken, one of the things that has happened is these individuals who have espoused those particular points of view that you're talking about have really put the universities in question in a situation of jeopardy. And the reason for that is because there are a number of people who are of Jewish descent or who are Jewish and active in their faith who have been great financial contributors to those institutions of higher learning. And when they see those students in the student body protesting against the people of the Jewish faith and protesting against Israel, that's not sitting well with them. As a matter of fact, there were some hearings in Washington about that. There were 3 college presidents. One was from the University of Pennsylvania, one was from Harvard University. Both of those testimonies resulted in those individuals losing their jobs as president of those institutions of higher learning, and justifiably so, because they could not back up the reason as to why they would allow for these woke students to be able to share their opinion and share their view, but then conservative students and those that had alternate views not be able to share, not be able to talk about why they had the positions that they had. And so now those people can practice their wokeness in another location because they're not going to be associated with those institutions of higher learning. Roll Tide.
But Harvard, the head of it, Ms. Gay, she was tired, resigned or whatever you want to. She lost her job, but she's still making nearly $1 million a year still there at Harvard. And when we looked at Harvard, that was the epitome of the education system. The colleges, we looked at them as being there. Oh, I went to
Well,
Harvard.
we used to.
Up until that.
That's right.
I went to Harvard. I went to Harvard. Well, if you went to Harvard now, you better keep your mouth shut because somebody's going to slap you.
Right. But I tell you what it reminds me of. It reminds me of a story about Don Siegelman campaigning for Secretary of State back when he was running in 1978. One of the people that he had never met that he wanted to meet was an Alabama legend in Alabama politics, and that was Big Jim Folsom. So he went to Coleman, and he met him at the truck stop where he had coffee every morning. And Governor Folsom was asking, at the time, Don Siegelman, now we would refer to him as Governor Siegelman, would tell me a little bit about you. So he told him he grew up in Mobile. He told him that he went to the University of Alabama. He served as president, student body at the University of Alabama. He had been in law school at Georgetown, got his degree there, and then he actually studied abroad at Oxford University in England. And then he had come back and he'd worked with the state party, and now he was finally running for office at the ripe old age of 28. And so Governor Folsom asked him, he said, "Where did you say you went to school?" And he said, "Well, I went to Alabama, and then I went to Georgetown at law school, and then I went to Oxford and studied law and economics." And he said, "Son, let me just share something with you." He said, "If you want to reach the people of Alabama, when you talk about Oxford," he said, "tell them that you studied at Oxford High School. That's going to be more effective for you than talking about going to Oxford, England." He said, "Yes, sir." And that was the end of the conversation.
Well, you know, you mentioned Big Jim Folsom. See, a lot of the people out there, I have to age myself. I remember when Big Jim started, and I was at the Calhoun County, you've been there many times, the Calhoun County Courthouse. And up on that top step was a fella politicking for governor. He had on overalls, and he had one gallus hooked, and he was barefooted. And his voice would roar. I mean, when he talked, he didn't need a microphone. I was about 15 years old at the most, and I'm sitting there, I was just saying, oh, this guy, he just was, whoever he is, whatever he's doing, I am scared to death of this man. This man is, his voice just had a roar to it like a lion. I mean, had you ever meet him by any chance?
Never got the privilege to meet Governor Folsom. Of course, I did have an opportunity to meet Jim Folsom Jr. and
Same thing.
Of course, he had a great voice too, and really good looking, and just a great statesman for the state of Alabama. But Governor Folsom is one of those iconic legends in the history of the state, much like Ken Rollins. And you're going to get to see a little bit more of Ken when we come back from this commercial break.
And welcome back to Brainstorming America. I'm Ken Rollins, and John Merrill here. John, when we talked about the school system in Harvard and whatever, the woman getting fired, they don't know the hate for Jews came out of that. But what I saw...
But Ken, before you continue with that, look, one of the biggest problems that we have with these young people that are involved in these demonstrations and expressing their opinion about things is they don't know what they don't know. And because they haven't really lived, they haven't had any exposure to things outside their cozy little environment where they grew up, is when they get in that situation, they think that if you disagree with them, then you're wrong and you're ignorant, and they don't know enough to get out of the rain when it's even starting to have the storm clouds come around. So that's important to understand.
Yeah, well, the hate for the Jews that's coming into schools, the reason I was speaking about it here is we got schools here. I watched when they had the Black Lives Matter movement. It wasn't long till it was in University of Alabama, University of Georgia, Florida, all over. So what is happening here with the hate for the Jewish people is like they are to have some kind of scorn put on. If you are a Jewish heritage, you're supposed to be put over in a corner somewhere. This is something I see is going to affect Alabama.
And we really
beyond.
haven't seen it in our state, or we haven't really seen it in deep South states yet. One of the things that I think is really, really positive is that the leadership of our institutions of higher learning in the southeastern United States have dealt with this head on and talked about the reason that we need to have an open dialogue and we need to have an exchange of ideas. We need to have an understanding and appreciation for people that are of different ethnicities and people that are of different faiths, and be able to share their opinion and share their views and why it's important in order for us to continue to be able to come together, to worship, to work, to live together, and to be able to advance the cause and the culture of our particular society. And when we start to lose that, then discriminating against one particular group of individuals is something that we'll see, much like we did in Nazi Germany back in the 1930s before the rise of Hitler and then World War II. And I am reminded whenever you bring this up, Ken, I've shared this a couple of times. I hope the audience will not get tired of me sharing it, but I think it's so important that we need to remember it. You need to remember it. It's the poem from Martin Niemöller, who was a German philosopher, who shared at the time of World War II that first they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. And then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. And then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not Jewish. And then they came for me, and there was nobody left to speak for me. And that's where we are today. And it's our charge as Americans, in the greatest country in the history of the world, to take a position, to take a stand, and stand up for those that need to have a voice that oftentimes are not in a position to be heard.
And the head of Harvard, Yay, when she was terminated or let go, what the first thing she did? Yell racism.
Of course.
Then there was nothing that I saw in those. She testified before Congress, and during her testimony, she was asked questions by I can't say her name, Scalise, whatever, from New York. She asked her questions, asking her to condemn anti-Semitism. She wouldn't do it. She said it depends on the situation, the circumstances, and all that. She refused to stand up for people who would make anti-Semitic statements.
But Ken, when somebody like that calls the race issue into question, it actually hurts everybody when true racism is introduced and it exists. Because nobody that I know, nobody that I would interact with, and nobody that I would support ever promotes racism. We cannot have that in today's environment. We should never have had it in the history of the world, but we've had it since man was created. But one of the things that we have to do is we have to stand up and we have to push back against that. And when somebody uses the race card to promote their own personal agenda for either their own inability to articulate a particular political philosophy or a point of culture that needs to be introduced, then it hurts everybody when you invoke the race card, because when racism is actually being promoted, if you can't challenge it, because people say, well, they always say that every time, they always say that. People don't feel the way that they should feel about actual racist incidences that are being introduced.
Absolutely, and I can demonstrate the way I feel about it right here with this cup of coffee. if I get some water and I start adding to this coffee, and I just keep pouring water in there and pour water in there, this being racism, I just keep adding water to it. I got a cup of water. I don't have racism anymore. So they have yelled racism so much about every little thing. I kicked my toe on the curb and the concrete's up too high. That's racist. A car pulled out in front of my uncle. Yeah, it was racist. Everything they do, put it in there, and they just keep adding to it and add to it. That there's no more such thing as racism left because they've watered it down, in my opinion. It didn't have any effect to me. I lived during the days of Martin Luther King, and I lived during the days of the riots, and I was on the head of Pizzett's department store in Birmingham as Martin Luther King and his group was marching up First Avenue, and I saw Bull Connor. You know who that is?
Oh, yes, sir.
He ordered the fire truck to turn on the water. I never to that day understood how much pressure is in water. So I saw those water cannons hit those people and blow the dresses off of those women that were marching. It was a hard day. Something I remember personally. I was there and I've seen it. So don't tell me racism is those little things that they throw out there like that. And there's three little letters that I want to get into, and we may have to go into the next segment with them. DEI. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is something they're kind of going to do away with. It looks like some places are. It's saying that everybody's going to have to be the same. It comes back to me, the Communist Party was like that. If you got $500 and I got $750, I got to give you half of mine to make you equal to me. And that's what that looked like is going to be to me. Diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yes, sir.
Has been something that all the schools are operating off of.
Well, it is, and it has been a problem. It's been a problem in education, it's been a problem in business, and it's been a problem in politics and in government today. But that's something that we will have to reserve to talk more about later on. We're so excited you chose to join us for the 47th episode of Brainstorming America. We'll look forward to seeing you next week.